Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. May Allah's peace, mercy, and blessings be upon you all today. So I first off want to start by saying welcome to each and every one of you to the first day of our 9th annual United Islam Awareness Week. My name is Saraya Al-Shahimi from Simon Fraser University, and I'll be the MC for tonight's lecture, as Rabia just said, titled Islam's Theory of Everything by Abdullah Al-Andalusi. So just to give a little introduction to what United Islam Awareness Week is, it's a week-long campaign representing the true message of Islam to humanity and its relevance in today's evolving landscape. And so 2020 certainly brought with it unprecedented challenges that continue to have significant impacts on all of our lives. It's also provided an opportunity for reflection into ourselves and what we as individuals, communities, and societies deem as important. And in many instances, the world has witnessed the true underlying nature of our societies coming to surface. And so this has prompted many to search elsewhere for answers and guiding principles. And for Muslims worldwide, we have also been turning to our faith as a guiding compass. And for this week, that is what we are doing. We're offering the greater community the opportunity to discover meaning in these times. And so to give just a quick little introduction about our Muslim Student Association at Simon Fraser University, we've been active for many years, and we continue to be involved in providing a space for Muslims to pray, learn, meet others, and get involved in the community, as well as many other activities. And at the MSA, our SFU MSA strives to meet 3 objectives. So providing and facilitating religious services on all 3 campuses, and providing and facilitating educational programs on Islam, like today we are here, and providing space and opportunities for creating a sense of a Muslim community. So before I introduce our speaker for today, we wanted to start off this blessed gathering with a Quran recitation, so a recitation from our holy book as Muslims. And here to do that today is Brother Muhammad Aziz, and so I will pass the mic over to him right now, and then we will continue on after that.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وسيق الذين اتقوا ربهم إلى الجنة زمرا حتى إذا جاءوها وفتحت أبوابها وقال لهم خزنتها سلام عليكم طبتم فادخلوها خالدين وقالوا الحمد لله الذي صدقنا وعده وأورثنا الأرض نتبوأ من الجنة حيث نشاء فنعم أجر العاملين وترى الملائكة حافين من حول العرش يسبحون بحمد ربهم وقضي بينهم بالحق وقيل الحمد لله رب العالمين صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you, Muhammad, Brother Muhammad, for that beautiful and touching recitation. Now to get into tonight's lecture, I wanted to start off by giving a quick introduction for our speaker, Abdullah Al-Andalusi. So Abdullah Al-Andalusi is an international speaker, thinker, and intellectual activist for Islam and Muslim affairs. His work involves explaining and demonstrating by rational argument the intellectual proofs for the Islamic belief system and promoting the Islamic way of life and Islamic solutions for contemporary problems. He's also had a long experience of working in the Muslim community, and his activities involve researching, writing, and talking extensively on Islamic revivalism, theology, philosophy, the physical sciences, sociology, psychology, anthropology, and political philosophy. So a lot, mashallah. And in 2009, he co-founded the public discussion forum, the Muslim Debate Initiative, which is a forum that promotes open dialogue and critical debate between thinkers, academics, politicians, and public speakers of all backgrounds. And so before we get into the lecture, I did want to let everybody know if anybody has any questions during the lecture, you can type them in under the Q&A channel, which is next to the chat function. And so you can do that during the lecture. And we also will have a Q&A period after the lecture. And we will be going over them in our Q&A session at the end. So we encourage you to send any questions you have during the lecture and during the Q&A session through that channel. And so now with that, I will be passing the mic over to Abdullah Al-Andalusi to begin his lecture on Islam's theory of everything, which will explore what is the only possible theory that explains the realities of the universe as we know it, and why do Muslims claim that Islam is the whole and absolute faith, and how can such a claim be made. And so with that, I will officially pass the mic over, and Abdullah Andalusi, you may begin whenever you are ready.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على النبي الكريم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين وصحبه الصالحين. I greet you all the Islamic greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to give my thanks to the United Islamic Awareness Week Initiative, all the MSAs, NYMink, and the many attendees that have taken their time to attend. Unlike previous years, I'm actually now speaking to you from London. I was deprived of a Tim Hortons, which I usually regularly enjoy and even more regularly imbibe while I'm over there. So I guess we all have to make sacrifices during this time. So it's good to address you all, guys. I hope everyone in Canada is doing okay, and everyone around the world that's also accessing this, that you're doing okay in the trying circumstances. So today's discussion is going to be on Islam's theory of everything. It's just been meant to be an intriguing title. Rather, it's not a theory, or a theory as in something that we would consider to be unproven or that lacks certainty, but rather is something which is an explanation. And the word theory really is profit to be an explanation for things that you observe. So we, as Muslims, believe that Islam is an explanation for things that we observe. But the question is, of course, that how well do we know if this explanation is certain or not, and can we demonstrate its certainty when the purpose of all explanations is to obviously explain what you observe. No one can deny that they are experiencing the reality that they're of some kind. That can't be denied, and no one will posit a theory that there is no existence at all whatsoever, of course. However, where the difference of opinion occurs amongst the many civilizations, beliefs, religions, and philosophies in the world today is what is the explanation behind what we observe? What was the cause of it, the origin of it? What is the purpose of it, if it has a purpose? What's happening behind the scenes from what we are observing, and what will be our eventual destination. So I kind of titled this the Islam's theory of everything, kind of a play on words from in physics, a theory of everything, or sometimes people might use terms like grand unified field theory, a type of equations that explain, or not explain, but rather just model accurately all the different forces and particles and that exist in the standard model, and linking that ultimately with quantum gravity, which I won't go into today so much, unless you want to bring it up in the questions answers. If you feel that the standard model of physics and of course quantum mechanics, if you want to raise any questions you have about that, I'm more than happy to discuss that. Anyway, so let me share my screen and let's get on with the show, as they say. Excellent. Can you still see me? Just in case, so I can gesticulate and not do it to no audience. Okay, good. You can't have a good lecture without good gesticulating. So let's begin. First and foremost was a theory, which I already kind of discussed. The theory is simply just an explanation and nothing more really. An explanation behind what is apparent. So what is apparent needs no explanation. It's just apparent. So what you need is an explanation as to what is the origin, what is causing what you are observing, or what is the mechanism or the process or the rules that what you're observing is following. So theory is always about what you can't see. So if anyone says, I only believe in what I can see, then what they're saying is that they don't believe in any theory possible. They're just observing. And that's basically, that's kind of denying the human faculties of explanation. And of course, theories have explained quite a lot throughout human history. So a theory is really just an explanation behind what we can see. But the question is, how do you test theories, right? How can you test a theory? Well, you test a theory if there's something that you observe that it can't explain. So if there's something that you observe that you can't explain, or that contradicts what the theory says should be the case. So theories can make predictions, and if you see a contradiction between that and what the theory says, then the theory is wrong. The model the model of how things work or where they come from is wrong if it can't explain, as in if it can't account for what you can observe. And that's the only way we can test any theory, is by what we can observe. So inshallah, that's what we're going to be subjecting the theory of Islam's theory of everything to. Does it make sense, and is it consistent with what we can observe? And is it deducible from what we can observe? So can we validate the theory that Islam posits, the theory, quote unquote, that Islam posits to explain everything that we can see? So before we start off any kind of investigation of the external world, we need to ask the question, can we know anything about the external world? Is it possible? It's quite fashionable in modern arenas of academia to be skeptical to the point that you say, oh, I don't even know if external reality is even true or even real. And so I thought that we'll just quickly demolish those unfortunate irrationalities which really ignore the basis and premise for understanding reality in the first place, for the fact that we know that reality exists first and foremost. So this is basically it's quite similar to Descartes' I think, therefore I am, but it's something more fundamental. So ontological nihilism means, how do you know that nothing exists, that the case is not that nothing exists? How about maybe there's nothing that exists, and notice this is all just a delusion that we are entertaining? Well, the problem is that we're experiencing, there's experiencing happening, as in you're experiencing something. Whatever you, at this juncture, even if you want to concede it being illusion, you have to exist. Something has to exist to be delusioned, and therefore it's quite obvious the fact that there is existence. Existence exists. There is reality, which is quite obvious. Otherwise, not only would you not be experiencing anything, but you would not even be an experiencer in the first place. So you don't need to think, therefore I am. Sometimes many people don't think. And that would preclude a lot of people who participate in and base their voting habits on certain tastes of theirs. They clearly don't think when it comes to people they want to see in power. But it doesn't mean that they don't exist. And so they exist by dint of the fact that they experience, we experience, and therefore we exist. So something very fundamental, but I just thought I'd get it out there just to kind of, let's start basing our kind of deductions on some absolute certainty, a certain bedrock of rationality and certainty. The next observation of reality is solipsism. How do you know that you're not the only one that exists? You're the only one that exists, and everything outside yourself doesn't exist. So how do you know that maybe you're the only one that exists in reality and there's no other reality outside yourself? I'm sure some people have often thought that to themselves, that how do I know that everyone is not an automaton, a robot of some kind, and you're the only one that exists, or you're in a dream, or whatever, that kind of argument. Let me refute that one off the bat, first and foremost. You basically, there's a reality outside yourself. Whatever that is at this juncture, we can definitely affirm that you don't control it. You didn't control yourself coming into existence. You certainly know that you're not eternal. and you certainly know that you can't do anything you want. You certainly know you can't will anything you want, and yet you are experiencing something, and since you're experiencing something that's not you because you can't control it, therefore we know for absolute certain that there is external reality, and that is well, that's quite straightforward, I think. So there is external reality, so we don't have to have any skepticism on that. Is epistemological nihilism true? So is there how can we know anything about the external world? So, okay, let's say there is an external world to ourselves, but how can we know anything about it? Maybe we're in an illusion or in the matrix, brain in the vat, perhaps. The standard tropes that skeptics might posit. We're seeing a mirage and things like that. Well, first and foremost, let's just assume in the matrix you're having a fever. I hope you don't. But let's say you're having a fever. This is delusions you're experiencing when you're sleeping. You're having a dream and all this stuff. So they say that how do you know that what you're seeing is real? Well, first and foremost, all phenomena that you observe, because nothing can't produce something. So something can't come from nothing, in essence, or from nothing comes. Phenomena don't just pop out of existence, do they? Phenomena have to be caused. And if they are caused, then they're being caused by something. And that something has a real reality, because hence you are experiencing something, and that experience is of something connected to a real reality. So in the matrix, the programming code that you're observing, I mean, it's on someone's hard drive somewhere. It's not just something that has no existence. On someone's hard drive, there's a processor which is generating the graphics and so on and so forth. So that'll be the same. Brain in the vat is, the aliens who are shooting electrical signals into your brain. Those electrical signals are being obviously sent to your brain via a machine. The machine does exist. The aliens exist, at least in that hypothetical scenario. And even if you're having a fever or having a dream, what you are experiencing is basically the result of your synapses firing, your neurons obviously connecting. And obviously, we know that these neurons are storing memories, and the memories are being triggered to kind of create a recreative state. So the state you're basically recreating, like you're imagining, you bring together all your past experiences, and your brain is arranging them in various orders or disorders. But there is a reality, there is an origin to those experiences. They come from somewhere. So everything you experience comes from somewhere and is real. The question is your model of the external world accurate or not? That's the only question you need to ask. So is it accurate or not? The model of the external world that you have, that you're building, and so on. So there's that. However, we'll come back to that in a little second, because we first need to ask a much more fundamental question. So if I didn't create reality, and the phenomenon that I'm observing is obviously an effect, it's not a cause, where did reality come from? Because I didn't make myself, you didn't make yourself, we didn't control these things. So where is reality coming from? What is causing all of reality? So a much more fundamental question before we can make any further deductions and inferences. Now, I could bring up, obviously, discussions of science and Big Bang and so on, but I really don't have to. People often get confused, and they try to bring science, which is really just the empirical testing and measuring and mapping out of the processes of tangible reality observed via the five senses. That's science. It can't really tell you what's outside of the tangible bubble, which we might call the observable universe, the physical, let's say, universe. It can't tell you what's outside that. It can't tell you, it can't talk about ultimate causation, because all it can tell you is at various states in the universe's existence, how small it was, how big it was, And usually that's also a presumption. You're presuming you're taking the regularities of the universe, which we're going to call the laws of physics, and you're assuming they're always going to be the same way. They're always going to work in exactly the same way. And then you're just kind of, in a way, doing a thought experiment and rewinding it back to see, well, if we are expanding now, let's rewind that back and see, okay, we must have come from a small point of some kind. They don't know how big that initial point was, but a point of some kind. And then there was expansion and, space expanding. And of course, you can make a lot of deductions based on, and of course, inductions, based on the rules and regularities of how the universe, or the physical observable universe, behaves at this current instant in time. But science can't tell you ultimate causation. It can't tell you, is the universe eternal? Was it caused from nothing, and by nothing? Or was it caused by something else? So the science can't tell you any of that. Science is just basically mapping out how big this little bottle that we're in is, and how long it's been there, and how it works. That's all that science can tell you. So it really is completely irrelevant to our discussions. Now, some people often get confused. They say, well, if you use intuition, let's say the mind, science always proves the intuition wrong. Actually, it hasn't. A lot of science has been discovered, quote unquote, based on thought experiments. Einstein's thought experiments helped discover general relativity and special relativity. People use thought experiments. Schrodinger's cat is a thought experiment. People use thought experiments all the time, which is basically the application of your intuition with a set of rules from which either you observed, or just the law of non-contradiction as the ultimate litmus test of truth, which has never failed us. So intuition has never failed. What has failed is assumptions. So when people thought that the universe behaved according to the Newtonian model of mechanics at all levels of itself, from large to small, well, that's not true. That's an assumption. When it was assumed that all things were particles, were tiny little balls, perhaps of 0-point mass, or of the Greek atomos, of some spheres of some kind, indivisible spheres, this was just assumptions. That's not intuition. That's just assumptions. We assume it's that way, and then experiments show me it's not like that way. Oh no, my intuition has been refuted. No, it's not the intuition, it's the assumption. So basically, usually when we discuss these topics about God's existence, purpose behind the universe, the intent of the creator, the science really has no bearing in the matter, other than maybe when looking at biological things or things in the universe, the very specific ways the creator has created the universe. But let's not assume the creator exists just yet, of course, because at this point in my lecture, I haven't proven anything regarding the creator. So let's get straight onto that. Now, I can use syllogisms, which is in essence what they call logic, if you'd like, to kind of make a deduction. But I can make it very simply, and I don't want you to read this just yet. So I want you just to think about this point in time. In this point in time, how do we know there was a start point to everything that exists? How do we know? How can we come up with any conclusions if external reality could be lying to us, right? As a skeptic might argue. And I say, okay, Mr. Skeptic, or Mrs. or Miss Skeptic, or Mrs. Skeptic, or ex-skeptic. I'm not sure the gender pronouns requirements of skeptics. We can concede that maybe you're in the matrix, maybe brain in the vat, maybe you're just in a dream, or you're having a fever and you're having delirium. But there's something that is undeniable in any one of those scenarios and environments, and that is we are seeing change. So we're seeing things move from one state to another state. There is change, or what you might call time, if you'd like. That's undeniable. That's an aspect of reality that's present throughout, right? Now, it doesn't depend on the specific details that you're observing, as in, like, is there is there a matrix, or is there a dream, or is there delirium? It doesn't matter. You're seeing change. You're experiencing a reality that's changing. That's all that needs to be established, and that can't be denied, of course, because it just goes against the most basic empirical, as in empirical meaning what is apparent to you, most empirical experience. Okay, so this moment in change, was there an infinite amount of moments prior to this moment, of this present moment in time, or this present in a series of change that we observe? So that's a good question to think about. How do we know that the observable universe, or just whatever we are observing, is not eternal? We're just part of it. We're just like as a late interloper coming in and just observing it. But how do we know that it hasn't always been around? Why does it even require starting and creating in the first place? Well, if it was eternal, this changing thing that we are experiencing, if it's eternal, then there would be an infinite amount of time, an infinite amount of moments or changes to get to this moment in time. So quite simply, would we ever reach this moment in time if we had to wait an infinite amount of time? We had to wait for it to pass, to finish. If I was to tell you that this lecture will finish after an infinite amount of time, and then you can go home, well, you probably are home already, then you can have a nice cup of Tim Hortons coffee, right? French vanilla is my favorite, by the way. Would you ever get that cup of coffee? All right, if you had to wait an infinite amount of time, you had to wait for it to finish. Well, you wouldn't. Why? Because the very definition of infinity is it doesn't end. And so to get to this moment in time, you're saying we have to wait for the end of an endless series, which is obviously a contradiction. And of course, contradiction is how we know something is not true. It's the only way we can know something is not true with absolute certainty. And so there can't have been an infinite regress going back into the past. This is called infinite regress fallacy, basically, for those who want to know the philosophical jargon behind it. Infinite regress fallacy in the past. That can't be the case. It has to have started at some point. We don't know when that point was. We don't know how old it is, because maybe this particular universe is a bottle universe, and there might be part of a bigger universe or physical universe. I'm not going to assume anything. I'm simply going to say that at some point in the past, or prior to this moment in time, or prior to this slice of time, even in the B theory of time, you can't have had an infinite regress of prior slices of time, prior moments in time. Otherwise, you'd never get to this point in time. There'd be no movement of time if time was infinite in the past direction, and we're going forward in the direction of increasing entropy, which of course is the direction that we're moving in all the cosmological models in all the models in standard model of physics and so on and so forth. So there's a start point, okay, but maybe the universe started by nothing. It just came out of nothing, by nothing. Nothing brought it into existence. It just emerged from nothing. Well, again, there's a contradiction in that, because from nothing, and I mean absolute nothing, nothing comes. As the Greek philosophers said, you can't get something from nothing, which is kind of absurd and self-evident. Well, you'd think it was, but people try to spin a lot of philosophical jargon to try to hide that fact, to make it seem plausible. But there is no way around it. You can't just say there's absolute nothing and then something comes from it. Likewise, did the universe create itself? Well, again, that follows the same absurdity, in that the universe has to exist to do something, and prior to it existing, it didn't exist, and so nothing can't do anything, and therefore from nothing, nothing comes. And so with the only option we're left with, the only possibility that we're left with, is that the universe was created by something. So the universe wasn't always around, but it was created by something. What is this something that created the universe? Well, there could be two possibilities. The first possibility is that this something is a mindless mechanism of some kind that just makes universes, just creates universes mindlessly. Okay. Well, let's consider that option first before we consider. Then the other option is that it's not mindless. But let's look at the mindless option. Maybe it's mindless. Maybe it's like a big factory that just makes universes mindlessly without no intent behind it. But the problem with no intent or no initiating is that if this mindless thing makes universes, then the question is, what makes it makes universes? Either if nothing is, if it is the beginning, the first beginning to this universe, what's making it make universes? So you might say maybe it has an internal mechanism of some kind, or process, or some type of chain of causality that pushes it, that impels it to make universes. And I say, okay, well, all right, fine. But then what is making that chain or that prior step to this mindless thing? What is making that make this mindless thing make universes? Because then, see, this mindless thing wouldn't be the first cause of the universe. It would just be another kind of step in this regress going back in time. So this thing would be part of just not a step, and there's a prior step to it. So then the question is there a step before that? And it's a yes, then is there a step before that? And it's a yes, if there's a step before that. Now, if you're saying there's an infinite amount of prior steps, or prior processes, or mechanisms that's making that mindless thing make universes, then that's not an infinite regress fallacy. It's like me saying to you that if I was to take a watch and the hand is moving on the watch, and you ask me, what's making the hand move in the watch? I say, well, this is an infinite watch, and what's making the hand move in the watch is a cogwheel or a spring behind that, and that is being wound up and kind of let go by a spring behind that, and that's being wound up and let go by a spring that's underneath that, and underneath that, and underneath that, going down an infinite amount of times. The problem is, to get to that spring, or to get to the hand in that watch that makes it move, you'd have to wait, or you'd have to, in essence, wait for the completion of an infinite amount of springs to each impel each other to get to that hand to move it. Of course, would that hand in the watch move? It wouldn't. And so you can't have a mechanism or some mindless thing which is moved by an infinite amount of internal processes, because it's still an infinite regress fallacy. There has to be an ultimate start point somewhere, a first cause, a first mover, if you'd like to use the Aristotelian term, that starts everything. But then, of course, if it is the absolute first mover, if there's nothing internal that's making it do stuff, then why is it doing stuff? Why is it moving? Why is it moving things, creating things, initiating things, being the first to do so, and nothing is making it do it? How can that be explained? Well, there's only one thing, only one phenomena that it resembles. If something initiates without obligations, and nothing obliges it to, nothing makes it initiate, create, or move things, or be the first mover of things, and that's because it wants to. It initiates it itself. It is the origin of its own initiation. It initiates it out of choice. And if there's something that created everything, that initiated, or at least the observable universe, and initiated change, and did so out of choice, and that basically meets the definition of that English word called God, or ilah in Arabic, if you prefer, or deus, and if you'd like that one, any which word you'd like to use, or deva in Sanskrit, I believe. So you have a thing that it creates, and to create, of course, you have to make something where there wasn't before, it didn't exist beforehand. You have to add to reality, in essence. You're adding to reality. This creator, if it begins or initiates creation, then where it was nothing, it adds something there. It can add from nothing, as in it creates it adds to reality. It creates from nothing, but by its own ability or power. So this thing creates from nothing. So, and if it can create energy from nothing, in essence, it initiates something to exist where there was no existence prior to that. Then it has unlimited or inexhaustible power. You could say, use the word infinite. It has infinite power. So it's infinite power, or inexhaustible power, if you'd like. It has a will, and it creates everything. That is the very definition of the creator. But if you'd like a more syllogistic form, you can represent it like this. There is existence, which is ascertained by experience. There's no denying this. Something cannot come from nothing by nothing. Therefore, there is necessary existence, as in there was always something existing. That's always the case. There cannot be an infinite regress of change. Therefore, change isn't necessary, i.e. there was a time when there was existence before change. For change to begin, there must be a capacity for an existence to initiate change from nothing. So from a state of non-motion, non-motion or nothing, if you like. Since randomness is impossible, meaning self-causality, so something causes itself into existence, or something is brought into existence by nothing. So it's self-contradictory. A cause selection of an effect without a cause for that specific selection, as in something comes and nothing is initiating or bringing that thing into existence, but it just brings itself to existence, which is obviously impossible. There must be a selection or choice occurring. So if the universe is being created, and of a particular kind, obviously, it has particular measurements, it has particular amounts of energy in it, both positive and negative energy, which some people call gravity, then to a certain amount, then certainly it was selected, it was chosen, and there must be an origin to that choice. The capacity to choose means this existent thing has a will. Therefore, everything that changes requires an ultimate creator, God, something with will and the capacity to initiate or increase into existence from nothing. So basically, since something from nothing is impossible, so if something does happen, it was chosen, and if it's chosen, then it has then this thing that has the ability to choose has a will, and if it has a will, if it has a capacity to initiate from nothing, this is the minimum definition of the word God. So we know that God exists with an absolute certainty. I could dare say that we know that God exists. God's existence is more certain than what you can observe, because people might say, the skeptic might say, you might be dreaming, you might be the Matrix, you might be okay. Even if I concede that, I can still demonstrate God's existence, and I can still demonstrate it is the only possible explanation for change, for what I'm observing, and therefore it is more certain. God's existence is more certain than my model of reality, or based on what I observe. Might be I don't know how accurate it is. It's not 100% certain. But God's existence, in essence, after your own existence, so you know that you exist because you're experiencing. After yourself, the only thing that you can be certain of after yourself is the Creator's existence. All right. And it needn't be that complicated. I've only made it that complicated to make it, you could say, skeptic proof. But a child does it very naturally. A child notices that the child didn't make itself. It was brought into existence, you could say, against its will, right? It might say, oh, this denies our consent. It was brought against your existence. A child knows that it was brought into existence against its will, like we all were. And then it notices that there are things in the same boat with itself, everything that exists there, other people, sun, moon, planets, mountains, everything that's in the same boat, as it were, finite, limited things, just like the child. And then the child realizes that, okay, well, if they're all in the same boat and they all didn't bring themselves into existence, there must be something outside that outside of all of this, that's not like any of these things, that brought everything into existence. Because everything around me, even though it's of different kinds, is basically the same as me, which is we didn't have a choice. We are subject to change, and we don't control the external reality. So we were basically we were put here by something else. The child knows this very instinctively, which is why the idea of God just makes so much sense when you give it a name, right? Then the child goes, I mean, it makes sense. But then later on, skeptics come about and they say, oh, excuse me, I'm going to bring you some confusing philosophies or words that will make obscure for you this very basic reasoning. And so, all right, then, to make it a proof against such elaborate or perhaps convoluted mental gymnastics denying the obvious, I produced a basic syllogism, if you'd like, and say, right, well, go ahead, then, skeptics, you feel free to have at it and see if you can correct that. I use a more simpler argument, of course, in many of my debates with atheists, and to date I've not heard any of them be able to actually tackle it. They'll just say, I'm not convinced. Well, I'll say, right, that's great that you feel so certain, although it's not that great actually, but that's how you want to feel. But you're not the judge and jury of reality, are you? So if you can't find fault with the argument, then I'm not here to. We can't compel you, being creatures of free will. We can't compel you to accept reality. Only you can do that. But we're only here to make it undeniable according to reasoning. The reality. So God exists, and that's pretty straightforward. Now, again, what does the Quran say about this? Is very, very. It's very clear on this. That there exists God, and not only does there exist this creator, but the creator created the heavens and the earth, and he created it with truth, bil-haq in Arabic, which is, it's not just created, but it actually has reality to it. And also bil-haq can also imply it has purpose behind it. So, and it says, have they not pondered upon themselves? Allah created not the heavens and the earth and the that which is between them, except with truth and for a destined end. But truly, many of mankind are disbelievers in the meeting with their Lord. So many of mankind really rejects the truth, despite the evident facts, the evidence is being present in front of them. But before we jump the gun just a little bit, well, obviously we see the Quran again reiterating that the creator of heavens and the earth raised the height of the heavens and ordered it. He created the heavens and the earth with truth, and he shaped you and made you good shapes, and back to him is your journeying. So obviously the Quran believes in the creator, that the creator defined the limits of the heavens and the earth, expanded them, or raised the height thereof, which very much obviously agrees with what we can observe, obviously from red light shifts to show that there is an expanding universe that we are in, and it's still expanding. However, how do we know that there's only one God? People say, how do we know there's only one God? Well, there's two kind of basic lines of argument that we can say based on our just observation. So the first one is obviously observation. If the universe was caused by multiple independent creators of unlimited power, the universe would possess inconsistency, irregularity, and contradiction, meaning that the laws of physics itself would be changing all the time. It would be complete chaos. There'd be no regularities in the universe at all whatsoever, because you'd have these multiple unlimited powers of separate wills, each with an unlimited jurisdiction because their power is unlimited, and so the universe would basically be in complete chaos. And I don't mean complexity. I mean that the laws of physics would not themselves not even be constant, and you'd observe no regularity at all whatsoever. And it's actually an argument the Quran makes as well. But also there's also from deduction, which is if there were more than one unlimited being, they would limit each other. It's very straightforward. So if there was more than one God, which was obviously God being defined as unlimited, then there would be a limitation between these two creators, and they would cease. They wouldn't be God, or they wouldn't be of gods. Of course, that would be a contradiction. But of course, in order for there to be more than one being, there must be a separation of the two. If there is a separation, then there must be limits. Now we know that the creator of the heavens and the earth does not exist in a shape, can't exist in a shape. And how do we know this? How do we know that it doesn't have limitations? Because limitations are basically an extension of substance, or an extension of power in essence. So if the creator can create stuff from nothing, then it doesn't have limitations. It has no limitations. And if the creator is made of a substance, then that substance would run out. It couldn't initiate from nothing. You could also say that to cause anything to begin to exist. So even if there's a floating substance, to begin motion in that substance, there has to be creating an energy from a state of non-motion, so a state of basically you have to add energy to that system. So that you always have to add energy, and so something that can add energy, increase energy from nothing, has no limitations. But then if they can increase energy from nothing and has no limitations, then they don't exist in a form. Because if they exist in a form, then the question would be, then what defined that form? What gave it that particular form? And the form would be measured, a measured amount, and the thing would be a limited thing, which itself would have been created by something else. Because anything that has limits must be created by something else. But if something has no limits, there's nothing that it can be. It doesn't require anything to define it. Because in English, the word defining literally means definis, meaning you make the limits, right? Or when you determine something, when something is determined, from the Latin determinus, meaning you put an ending, or you circumscribe its existence. But if this creator is the first cause, it doesn't have limits. It doesn't have an essential shape of any kind. And so if it doesn't have a shape, if it doesn't have limitations, but it has a will, and the will has no limits to its jurisdiction, to its power, then it wouldn't even make sense to say there are two wills or three wills, because the one will would have a jurisdiction over everything, including any other wills. And then those wills wouldn't be a separate will, it would just be one will. So if something doesn't have, only things that exist within shapes can be separate from each other. But if something has no shape, then where does it exist, right? It doesn't have a location even, a specific location. And so it just has a jurisdiction. And its jurisdiction is over anything and everything, because it has no limits. And so there can only ever be one creator. As I said, a being with unlimited will can have no place, not under its control. Therefore, there can be no separation from its control of power. Or if there were more than one being, they would limit each other, and the limitation would require a cause, i.e. would need to be explained by what determined that specific quantity of infinite things. So if there was 2 or 3 gods, the question is, why 3? Why not 4? Why was there not 2 or 5 or 10? Why specifically that number? And if it has a number, then that number would have to be determined by something else. So something must have created a number of beings of that particular number. And these beings then wouldn't be God, because they wouldn't be the first cause. So there can only be one, because one requires no measure. You don't require something else to count one. One just means it exists, is the minimum requirement for existence. But beyond one is not necessary. And if it does exist more than one being, or 10 beings, 100 beings, then that can only be explained by being measured out and caused by something even higher than those beings that measure them out to be in that number. So there can only ever be, the first cause has to be one, and can only ever be one, and has no limits, and is a first cause, and so it is eternal. But remember, when I say eternal, it is eternal in that it had no beginning or cause, but it is not subject to change, as in it doesn't change. Because if it changes, then there's an infinite regress fallacy, would apply to that itself. So there can only ever be one God, one creator. And as the Quran says, say he is God. So the word Allah is in Arabic, it just means God. He is God, the one, Allah, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is begotten or nor is born. Nor is there anything like him. So the creator of the universe is one. He doesn't have children. He's not the result of procreation. These are for attributes of created beings, not to be attributed to the creator. And there is nothing like unto him. There's nothing equivalent to the creator. Nothing can be like the creator. Everything else can only ever be his creation, and therefore limited and finite. This brings us to the next question. So now we know that the creator exists. Just to kind of, in a way, go back to what I was mentioning before, going back to epistemological nihilism, how do we know that epistemological nihilism is false? How do we know that our senses are deceiving us? Well, this really then links back. This really links to what we've discovered is that if the universe was made by a will, which chose one thing over, one thing, which is our universe, the shape it is, the amount of energy and negative energy it has, over an infinite number of possibilities, and we know that randomness can't exist because that's basically an uncaused cause. Therefore, the specific universe that exists was intended to be that way. So all things that exist within it have intent behind them. So if change exists, change was intended, and the starting states and the ending states were intended, and all things, all the movement of all things, all events that happen in the universe were also intended. So everything in this universe was intended to be that way, deliberately so. And of course, if it was intended to be that way, then what we call purpose is where you start from one state and you are intended to end up in another state. Then your purpose was to exist in that state and to end up in the final state of whatever is the constituents of what you are. But everything that you exist, everything that you experience, your very existence and your end are all intended by the creator of the universe. And everything that exists is intended to be that way by the creator of the universe. And so existential nihilism, as in there's no intent behind existence, is obviously false. That we can prove with a certainty. The creator exists. Existential nihilism is false. So now the question is, okay, if that's the case, what is the specific intent behind creating all of creation, all of reality that we observe? And what we can see from this is that, again, this is also a demonstration that deism, it can't be true, which is linked to existential nihilism. But existential nihilism might argue that maybe God could exist, but this God doesn't care about us, we are too small and insignificant for the creator to care about us. But that can't be the case, because if the creator is the first cause, what caused the creation of the universe, if not his choice? So he created everything in this universe by his choice, deliberately so, including your existence, including you sitting here right now listening to this lecture, was intended by the creator from the very beginning of this universe. So everything in this universe was intended. And in a way, if the creator intended you to be, exist and experience everything that you experience in your life, the planets to be the way they are, the mountains to be the way they are, the oceans to be the way they are, all the planets and the exoplanets and the other stars around the universe to be the way they are and to exist the way they are and to be for a duration of time and to change the way they are and to end when they're intended to end, then everything was, then the creator in a way has knowledge of you, not in a way, in a literal way, has knowledge of you specifically, because he intended you to be there. He intended you to exist. And if they try to argue that maybe the creator could be mad or perform actions accidentally, which is committing an anthropomorphic fallacy against an existent thing that we've deduced has no components, substances, divisions, or limits. The problem with many people who are atheists is, or even deists, is they assume that the creator, the idea of the creator that we believe in, is a human being, a big beard with a robe that can have human foibles and obviously fallacies, or that the creator is subject to limited attention span. The creator makes the universe, but you're too small to be noticed by something that has an infinite will. Like, what? It doesn't make sense. That's a ridiculous argument to make. And of course, say that the creator is mad or does things accidentally is arguing for randomness. Again, they're trying to sneak in randomness by the back door. Randomness is uncaused causality, which obviously is an uncaused cause, which is a caused thing which is uncaused, which again is a circular reasoning. It is absurd and self-refutational, i.e., something coming from nothing. That's what basically is. So those things can't be the case. It has to be that it is so everything was intended. And what does the Quran say about this? The Quran says, has God saying in the first person, we did not create the heavens and the earth and everything between them in vain, as in for no intent. That is the assumption of those who disbelieve. Okay, that's their assumption. And there's those who remember God while standing or sitting or lying on their sides and give thought to the creation of the heavens and the earth, saying, our Lord, you did not create this aimlessly. Exalted are you above such a thing. So the Quran points out to the reader that it should be evident to yourself that everything that exists has a purpose behind it, was clearly intended, because if it wasn't intended, it wouldn't exist. It was brought into existence by choice. That's how we know that there is a creator, because the first cause can only be choice, and choice is intent. And obviously, if something is intended, then that's basically where we get the definition of purpose from. It was purposed for an end goal, because change has a beginning step and an ending step, and the ending step is intended, and an end step is what we call purpose, is what we call the intended goal behind all things. So then, what can we deduce? What is our basic deductions that we can make? Just from first principles, we know that there is existence, there is change, and not just change, there's regularity of change, which you can call natural law. And we also know that the universe has three subsets of things. It has inanimate matter and forces, organized and proactive matter, which is life, and of course, which is a subset of inanimate matter. And then you have man, or human beings, as a subset of life, which is knowledge-forming animate matter, which is ourselves. So what's the goal behind creation? Something that, again, you can make an inference, a deduction very clearly, which is if the creator creates from nothing, when prior to these created things didn't exist, then the very act of creation is a demonstration of the creator's ability to create. So the first purpose behind all things, the universal common purpose behind all things, is for all things to be a manifestation of the creator's power to create. All things are a proof of that, in a way, or a manifestation of it, and that's its ultimate purpose. That's the common purpose behind everything in this universe, to bear testimony, in a way, to the cause of their existence and the laws which underpin and quantify their relationship with other objects. So basically, it is an assumption to think that the universe exists solely to serve us, or even act as an evidence to ourselves. The universe exists just to be an evidence to ourselves that God exists. Well, the Quran doesn't say that. The Quran says that the creation of the heavens and the earth is a greater creation than the mankind, but most of mankind don't know not. Which has wonderful multiple meanings in that verse, which is really amazing. But I will only discuss one of those meanings, which is that the universe wasn't made for us. The universe was made as a manifestation of the creator's power to create, and that's its first and foremost purpose, of which our purpose is a subset of that, because we are made from the same stuff as the rest of the universe. And so the relationship with us, the relationship of the universe to us, is only to be part of that. We share that purpose, but the universe is not purposed just for us. But we see that in creation, that all that exists, we see there are multiple different aspects that arise. You have substance, you have passive change, you have regularity, which is just change, regular change, which you call the natural laws of the universe. Then you have accidental forms, which you call structures. Then you have growth, which is active change. And then you have self-preservation, which is survival and reproduction. Now we're entering into life forms. But then you have something else now in this universe, which is consciousness, which is us and animals. And then these two things, which are only us, that we are aware of, knowledge, the result of metacognition, and also what you could say thinking as well. So knowledge and thinking, and free will. Or at least, for those who are going to be skeptics about it, we experience something that appears to us to be free will. And we were then intended, we can deduce, we are intended to experience something that appears to us to be free will. So what can we deduce from all these things? Well, we can deduce that all these things are intended to be the case. We can deduce that because we were intended to have faculties, so certainly experience this creation, this universe. We can experience it. We have the ability to think, and we have the ability to form knowledge, to build mental models of the external reality. Now we can make a deduction from these premises. If the creator of the universe intended us to have faculties, to have mind and knowledge, then we can deduce that humans collectively, at the very least, just collectively, cannot be in an illusion, because it would be a contradiction for the creator to intend us to have to have consciousness, to have faculties that can observe and experience, and of course have metacognition, thinking, and the ability to form knowledge, not just remembered sensations like animals do, but we can actually store knowledge or mental model of the universe, to have these abilities but not use them, and be prevented from using them as a species. So collectively, humans are not cannot be deluded by reality. So collectively, humans are not in the matrix. Collectively, humans are not all suffering delusion from the senses that are in delirium, or they're all brains in a vat. Individual humans might, but collectively, if we are given these faculties and we know that we were meant to have them, then we know that we were meant to use them, and they would be pointless to use them if what we are observing, bearing witness to, bears no resemblance to reality in itself. So sure, our knowledge of the universe might be imperfect because we're finite, limited beings, and we can clearly see that we were intended to gain knowledge about the universe through increments, as in learning, as you call it. But we know we can now know that collectively humans were intended to have accurate observation of the universe, or not be under a delusion from our senses. And this ties in very nice and neatly with the Quran's argument, where it says in the argument that God created the heavens and the earth with truth. The material world isn't an illusion. Some people who are into spiritualist types of agnostic or also Gnostic spiritualism denied that the material world has reality. It has reality, and the Quran is affirming this, because it would be ridiculous to argue that the creator of the universe gave you these faculties and is giving you a sensation of an external reality to yourself, but that reality doesn't exist. And so the Quran is affirming a rational deduction that we can also deduce, and the Quran expects you to deduce that the creator of the universe made the entire universe bil haqq, with truth. So then, we see the Quran argues very, very clearly, we did not create the heavens and the earth and what is between them except in truth and for a specified term, for a duration. But those who disbelieve, from that of which they are warned, they are turning away. We also see that surely in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of night and day, which is a reference to time, it could also be a reference to change. There is existence and there is change. These are all signs, these are all evidences clearly for our faculties of not only God's existence, but his intent behind all things. So now we know that everything is intended, and we know that there is varieties of existences. Not everything has consciousness. Not everything is self-preserving. A rock doesn't try to preserve itself. If it gets hit by something, it breaks. So it doesn't try to actively grow. It doesn't try to actively preserve itself. Whereas there is active change occurring with life forms. So what's their purpose? Well, their purpose is to fulfill the laws behind their existence, which is to preserve themselves, to reproduce, to obviously to grow. And for animals and ourselves, we are intended to bear witness to this universe, this creation that we are observing. We know the creator of the universe intends us to bear witness. Why? Because we have consciousness. But we also know that animals and us don't share the exact same specific purpose, because we have something that animals that don't have, which is we have metacognition, ability to form knowledge, not just remember sensation or observation. And we also have, at the very least, what we experience to be free will. And so the creator gives us the experience of free will. It wouldn't make sense for the creator to give us the experience of free will, but we actually not have free will or the ability to choose other than what we have been motivated to choose. And indeed, we certainly feel that when we can choose other than having a strong motivation, we can sometimes choose weaker motivations over stronger motivations, which determinism would say couldn't occur. You'd only ever pick the strongest motivation at any point in time. So then, again, we see the creator of the heavens and the earth saying in the Quran, is he who creates like one who does not create. It's quite interesting because in this verse, if you say, well, why does the creator need to create the universe? Well, he doesn't need to create the universe. Many verses in the Quran say that it doesn't harm the creator in the slightest to not create the universe. Certainly, it's implied by that the creator didn't need anything from it. If people don't worship him, he's not harmed by it. And making the universe didn't tire him in the slightest, because he can create from nothing, and so it doesn't run out of energy if you can make from nothing, in essence, because you're literally making energy from nothing. But the fascinating thing is that the Quran is saying that if what is greater, in a way, what is greater, a God that can't create and a God that can create, right? What is greater? Well, a God that can create is greater, surely. And so this verse in the Quran, which is actually is an argument going in many different, it hits different types of argument, different types of falsehoods. This same verse refutes polytheism and idol worship, so worshipping idols and stones. But also it has, because the Quran has many such features like this, it has verses that apply to multiple cases, different subject matters, this exact same verse. And in this particular verse, it also applies to the fact that the creation of the heavens and the earth are a demonstration of God's power. Because if he did not create, how would that be any different from a God who cannot create? From something that cannot create, something that doesn't create and never creates. How is that different from something that cannot create? The effect is the same. But for something that can create and does create, it is indeed greater than something that can't create. And so this is a very fascinating verse. It's a very amazing verse in the Quran. But they're all amazing in different ways. But this one, in relevance to this subject, it illuminates us on how the creation of the heavens and the earth, how it glorifies the creator, showing that he can create, but he's not showing it to anyone. It's merely that it is a manifestation of his ability to create, and that's it. Now, how would we say that? Okay, that's all great. Creator made us to exist, but why do we say that we need revelation? Why would we need revelation from the Creator? Well, the thing is this: we have the faculties of mind, we have conceptual memory, we have the feelings of being able to choose our actions from two equally pressing motivations, or sometimes even we can choose the lesser of the two stronger motivations. We would be incomplete as a species if we were given nothing further in terms of knowledge about how to fulfill our instincts, about how to decide between our motivations, about how to live a life without being self-destructive or self-defeating in our behavior. And also, I could also add that without some kind of help from the Creator, we wouldn't even be able to speak language, because as anyone who studies language would know and could tell you, the big mystery is, where did language come from? If humans aren't taught language, we never develop it spontaneously. There's never been any case of the spontaneous development of language. And past a certain point in your development as a child, so once you reach around maybe 15 years old or so, if you haven't learned language by then, it becomes extremely difficult, virtually impossible for you to pick up language after that point in time. It becomes too late for you, in essence. So where did language come from? Right? And the Quran has an explanation to this, which is that God taught Adam alayhi salam the names of things, the names of all things, and Adam, being the first human being, was given language, and then from then on, him and his progeny, his tribe, Bani Adam, could use language. And this is quite fascinating because in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it has it all the way around. It says that Adam starts naming things by himself, which we know doesn't really make sense because language doesn't spontaneously generate from human beings. We never observed it. There's no mechanism that can explain it. It baffles linguists to this day. But if the Quran was just plagiarizing the Bible, why didn't it plagiarize that? It didn't. It said actually it was God who taught Adam alayhi salam the names of all things, and that was the origin of language. So without the first revelation to mankind wasn't just revelation of how we should live, it was language itself, in essence, which is quite fascinating. But we couldn't judge good and bad. We need a criteria to decide between our motivations, and of course we need to be able to know what is our natural law. Everything in the universe has a natural law. The insects seem to know what to do. Bees seem to know what to do. They even can build hexagonal beehives, honeycombs perfectly, with no blueprints to work off of. Dogs seem to know what to do. Rabbits seem to know what to do. Every animal on this planet seems to know what to do to live its life according to what is optimal for its species. But what do humans with our brains and our metacognition and our memory, our knowledge, and our conceptual model building, what do we do? How do we live? And what conceptual model are we meant to have regarding how we should live? And the very fact that we can observe, we can have conceptual models, and the very fact that it was intended by the Creator for us to bear witness to his creation, and to have our mind to actually come to awareness of his existence, meaning that the Creator of the universe intended that you could be able to come to an awareness of his existence, suggests that there is a relationship that we should be having with the Creator based on knowledge. But we can't deduce anything about what the Creator, how the Creator designed our natural law, because we weren't born with an instruction manual. We weren't born with any way to know truth. So anyone to know the truth of how we should live, our purpose, good and bad, our political system, our economical system, what is justice, what is desert, as in what is deserved between people, how do you treat people according to what they deserve, what is the definition of what people deserve in the first place? What are their rights upon you? We don't know. If you're saying, well, just let humans work it out for themselves, but how would they work it out? How would they know what was good or bad? A human might think, and it certainly is the case, that they should look after their own tribe and they should basically be prejudiced against other tribes, because they should care about their own family and not really care about other families if it goes against their interests. So that could be completely irrational from a materialistic perspective, but it's not. Somehow feels wrong, or rather something strange about that, because what is strange about it is because we know the creator of the universe intended all of us to experience the universe with pain and pleasure involved. And surely it couldn't be the case that since we are all the same as human beings in the eyes of the creator, that some of us as human beings could be allowed to be better than others without qualification. But that only makes sense if you believe in the creator. If you don't believe in the creator, then there is no equality between human beings. There's just the strongest survives, the strongest gets the benefits. The more socially useful humans should be rewarded more, and those who are not socially useful, if they take up resources, they're best being removed from society altogether. There's no way you can't, which way we're meant to live. There's no way to decide which way is good or bad, how to judge which way is the better way, unless you have a criteria given to us by a creator who intended us to have the ability to store mental models of reality in. And so we need revelation, and we need to have a way to validate it. We know that it should come in intelligible form, so it must be something that we can understand. It should be come in a manner that does not coerce people to acknowledge its truth, because free will seems to suggest that the creator of the universe wants us to fulfill our purpose in life, which is obviously related to being a manifestation of his existence, but to do so out of choice. It can only be based on choice. It can't be based on coercion. Likewise, the revelation must be God-centered, because the universe is God-centered. It must be conveyed to us via a messenger. If it was not conveyed to us, sent to us internally, it would negate our free will. We couldn't have any option to basically not do it, because in essence, it would be self-evident, and it would be compelling us to follow it. So it has to be taught to us in a manner that humans can use their free will and reject it or accept it. It had to be authentically transmitted and preserved. It would have to contain a message that comprehensively agrees with what we can observe of reality. And since the purpose of humans define every aspect of our existence, then this revelation must talk about every facet of human life, including our private life, our health, our relationship with our family, our relationship with our society, economics, politics, our relationship with nature. Everything must be covered by this, because it concerns the natural law for human beings that we need to work off of and live by. And of course, it must be internally consistent. It must be a guidance for all human beings, and it must be the same over all times and places, more or less. Obviously, there can be certain variations for geographical contexts, which we can get into. And it must produce contentment and satisfaction in human beings, i.e. fulfilling your purpose must create the optimal satisfaction, an optimal contentment for human beings, because we come with these pleasure and pain reward mechanisms and punishment mechanisms. So when we fulfill our purpose, we are rewarded with pleasure, we at least fulfill our instincts. And when we're involved in something which is harmful to us, we are told to avert it by the existence of pain. And so if we're fulfilling our purpose, we expect it to give us content. There must be accountability for free will. And so having the choice means there must be responsibility for that choice. And we see that the Quran argues that too, that people will be brought back to God and they will be punished with the same mechanisms of reward and punishment that exist in this life. When you're fulfilling your purpose, you are contented. So in the hereafter, for those who fulfilled their purpose during their life, they will be given contentment. And for those who they chose to not fulfill their purpose. Just like in this life, if you put your hand in an oven and you go against your purpose of self-preservation, you'll be given pain to a virtue, and in the hereafter must be a redress in a future existence, because we see that in this existence humans don't all experience the same. We don't have all the same experience. Animals don't all have the same experience as each other, or even of the same species. So this unequal experience of things which are fundamentally all equally experiencing the universe, there must be a redress for this inequality of experience, of different lives, different life experiences, different levels of pain and pleasure, and this redress must come in a hereafter. And this is, of course, where we see the need for ultimate justice. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The rights of justice will surely be restored to the people in their resurrection. Even the hornless sheep will lay claim to the horned sheep." So the horned sheep that had horn privilege, the one that didn't have use of the horns, there will be a redress between them. There'll be a equality between beings that didn't have that equal experience of this life, and there'll be ultimate redress. So these things are really the only thing that can explain the observable reality. Any other possibility, any other alternative, whether it's reincarnation, polytheism, obviously atheism, existentialism, any other variation other than what you observe, other than the explanation provided by Islam, produces contradictions, which I'm happy to go through in the Q&A. I am aware, by the way, and I do obviously acknowledge that I've basically, to fit everything into this small lecture, I've basically had to jump a few steps, more than a few steps along the way, to summarize, and I don't state every argument that could be used to justify these points, because I had to condense it into basically this session. But what the Quran says is, and the challenge it gives is that do they not reflect upon the Quran? If it had been from any other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would have found within it much contradiction. So Islam makes a challenge. It says that its explanation of reality is flawless. And not only that, but any other explanation of reality inevitably will encounter contradictions. So now my whole discussion, obviously, as I said, is summarized. This is for this reason I've been doing it's now over 26 sessions, but it was in essence a course called Dawah Masterclass, but really it's actually a step-by-step, blow by blow, tediously argued almost, point by point, going through this entire discussion with much more depth, much more detail, much more evidences, much more proof, including human history, biology, cosmology, discussing quantum mechanics in depth, the standard model, quantum field theory. It brings everything together, and it shows how Islam can account for all these things that we've observed. Different civilizations, different so-called different religions, different belief systems that occurred, everything. But it's because it needs to be so detailed. It's detailed for people to deal with skeptics, of course, who might obviously attack everything you would say. It's in-depth. It's an in-depth coverage. So you can access that if you email the Quran Institute, which is obviously is the platform I'm teaching this course in. This is just a picture of me teaching. You can see there. If I can zoom in. Oops, no, it's not. Yeah. You see me teaching Feynman diagrams. For anyone who knows about physics, that's good old Feynman diagrams regarding particles and particle physics. So that's me during my session on quantum mechanics, or a few sessions I've been discussing on science and mathematics and so on. So please, if you want, let's say, the full detailed version that I think is now going on, it's like 68 hours or something like this, please email the Quran Institute and to get access. I also want to say that I acknowledge that many of you our university students. Some of you might be hearing this for the first time, or maybe many of you might be hearing this for the first time as Muslims. Many of you have experienced doubts. Many of you have experienced concerns when you're encountering the university environment, different, philosophy courses, courses taught by people, the various sciences, but they're taught by people who believe in, some of the lecturers might be people who believe in metaphysical naturalism. So they just assume that there's only the material world, which is not what science says. Science doesn't say that. It might be procedurally naturalistic, but it's not metaphysically naturalistic. So a lot of these doubts can be averted. Many people who have crisis of faith and might even end up kind of having serious, obviously, existential crises can all be averted if you teach Muslims the reality of all these matters and build them up with certainty from a much younger age. Children are actually geniuses. They absorb information much faster rate. They are naturally more inquisitive. They have a greater tendency to ask more questions, and so they're the perfect time for you to kind of give them the full facts of reality, teaching them how they can understand that with certainty God's existence, demonstrating to them, engaging their rational faculties, teaching them to question. And so in the UK, they set up a kind of a global madrasa, which is now has branches around the world. And this one is the Canadian branch. So anyone of you knows family members who are between 7 to 16 years old, you can learn the Islamic theory of everything version, but also attached to that, there's obviously Hifz al-Quran, there's Tajweed, there's Quranic Arabic, there's a whole bunch of stuff being taught. It's a kind of a holistic madrasa. So not only will they be taught maths, science, as well as rationality and engaging in rational faculties and critical thinking, but they'll also be taught the standard subjects, including Hifz of Quran, so obviously memorization, tafsir, classical Arabic, and so on and so forth, which is all, and of course, Islamic concept of Islamic theologies. It's a holistic, kind of a pioneering attempt to do a holistic kind of madrasa, teaching kids at a much younger age a holistic understanding of Islam, reality, and equipping them with the faculties, or critical thinking faculties, as it's called, otherwise I would just call it rationality in essence. So if you know anyone that can benefit from that, who are 16 to 17 years old, please do suggest them for it, and basically give them this email address. So I'll leave it like that. But it's not just those instructors. A whole team of instructors, muftis, scholars, and out of place laymen, which is this person here. Please obviously do kind of take advantage of that, because I think that a lot of these kind of crises of faith can be averted when you equip Muslims at a much younger age to kind of with more advanced knowledge, rather than waiting for them to come to university, have issues, and then have these problems. And of course, if you give Muslims more at a younger age, they might go much further by the time they reach university age, doing amazing things, all-round benefit to not just their Islamic knowledge, but also in any vocation they might pursue. Anyway, barakallahu feekum for listening. I've kind of discussed quite a lot of stuff. I know you must have loads of questions. So Jazakallah khairan. I look forward to your questions and comments, and thank you for your patience. So inshallah, let's get into the Q&A. So barakallahu feekum.